Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
Ed, today we're going to dive into Rick Veach's Brat Pack. This was an exciting comic for me. But before we get into it, what's up?
Little businessman. Finally, an apropos plug. Red Room. Patreon.com/Ed Piscor. $3 get you the archive, and I'm serializing my Red Room strips. It's going to see a paper edition come 2021, but for the early adopter, you could check it out on Patreon. It was a 2-page week because I'm working on a new strip. So check this stuff out, man. This little clown dude.
That's a good one.
That would be the reflected
Right.
in there, but it's just on a different layer because I used duotone.
We'll learn all about this in the next artist edition, I'm sure. It'll be reprinted in pages. And if there's a world where Red Rooms are real, it is the Brat Pack world.
Let me tell you something, man. I read the book before bed, couldn't put it down when I went to sleep. I had some fucked up dreams, and I think they're going to apply directly to a future Red Room cover.
Well, save it for a minute. I want to plug Octobriana 1976, my blacklight comic. Out in the world now, wherever comics are sold, you can find these things. And my Octobriana process zine available on jimrugg.com/shop. It's a 350-page, very detailed look at everything I did to make this book. So if you're into process and how to, hook yourself up.
Successful Kickstarter, man, and the guy who made a successful Kickstarter tells you how to do the deal.
This book came out in 1990, 1991. This is published by Tundra, the legendary Kevin Eastman Tundra joint. But there are several editions, so we're going to look at single issues just because I think they look a little easier under the camera. They open up nice. But this was the first collected edition, introduction by Neil Gaiman. And I believe this is the first printed by Rick Veach or self-published by Rick Veach as King Hell Heroica. Keeps the Neil Gaiman intro. But one of the nice things of owning your own work, you get to continue publishing it wherever you go and however best suits your business. So one of the lessons I took away from a book like Brat Pack and seeing it early on was, whenever it's your own work, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
And he sure does.
In the book edition, I think very smart to have the Neil Gaiman intro and to keep it in the future volumes because Gaiman provides great context for sort of what Veach was going through at the time, where his headspace was, and just what the climate of the culture of comics was about around this time. You know, the Jason Todd Batman, the Jason Todd Robin, who I was there for the very first appearance of, and I actually liked the character. And I was there watching the 900 number where people could call in and root for his demise. I was hoping he wouldn't, but Mom wouldn't let me make the call. You know what I'm saying?
You could have saved his life. I hope you rubbed that in her face whenever the death issue came out.
Showed it right to her, man. Look at what Joker did to this poor boy.
Well, one last note before we actually get into these. This is Teen Angels and New Mutants, a book that Steve Bissette wrote about kind of like teen culture, I guess, and teen consumer culture. It's centered certainly around Rick Veach's Brat Pack, but it examines things like when companies started marketing and selling to younger consumers, and that meant teen sidekicks. It meant television stars, movie stars featuring young people, and of course music business has a long history of exploitation of teenagers. Really mind expanding kind of stuff. Like you read this and you see the history of teen exploitation, if you will. Pretty rich subject matter once you see kind of like what's out there. And there must be 20 pages of annotations in this thing as to like what he's digging through to get this information. So I would encourage anybody that loves Brat Pack, this is worth a read. It's just a kind of nonfiction historical look at where all these things have appeared throughout American pop culture history. Pretty interesting stuff. But task at hand, man.
Wizard Magazine is the first time I ever saw an image from Brat Pack, and it was this right here, in the price guide portion of the magazine, and totally struck me. But the issues, believe it or not, at a time when back issues were worth something, these were cost prohibitive to me, man. Like I never spend very much on back issues, and they were priced just a little too high for me, so I had to wait till the trades came out.
Visually, this reminds me a little bit of Aircell. Like you can see there's a certain amount of painting, kind of airbrush style painting on these covers. And then the insides have that similar kind of treatment of like airbrush and mixed media to create comics that look pretty different. This was when I was starting to get into black and white. I probably got hold of this in 92, 93, around Image time when I started to find comic shops and, started to mail order comics is probably when I got hold of this. And again, the Aircell stuff, I think Inside might look even more Aircell-like. It's much better drawn. The storytelling's way better, but it still has that kind of airbrushy quality, that painting reproduction quality.
Yeah, certainly on this uncoated paper, it has the very... I don't want to diss Rick Veach. I love Rick Veach, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's more of a material thing than anything else. Certainly, the tools are going to vary in different artists' hands, and Rick Veach, I think, one of the best. This also reminds me, if you look at his color work, like from Epic era, stuff like that, like this was a guy who was aggressively using different materials, painting, we've talked about melting crayons onto his pages and things like that. So I think in this case, the black and white's probably budget related, I would guess. Although it may be a choice based on the subject matter, too.
Yeah, the black and white really fits, man. It would be even more disturbing if we saw some of this stuff in colors.
But I love the art. I think it's gorgeous. And I recognized that whenever I got hold of this thing in the beginning, too. Like, in an Image era, this was a guy who was drawing everything. All right, a little bit more background on this. Two pieces. One is he leaves DC a little bit, probably around the time. He was working on this and sending it to DC. I think he had a pretty complete draft that, he was kind of shopping around for publishers. And at the time he was writing and drawing Swamp Thing, and then Swamp Thing 88 happens, which severs his relationship with DC whenever they cut one of his issues. When it's almost done, it was being inked at that stage. Like, it had gone through most of the editorial process, and then they changed their mind because Swamp Thing meets Jesus, and they thought that might be too controversial. So he leaves there with with further bad taste in his mouth. And whenever you read about some of this stuff, and there are lots of accounts of, Rick Veach interviewed by the Comics Journal, back matter and books, you can read about the accounts. He was disillusioned, I think, by the experience of working through corporate comics, seeing very clearly that these companies were just out for money. And that was kind of the bottom line decision-making thing. It had nothing to do with making the best comics you could or creative decisions. It was really bottom line driven by money. And I think that kind of changed his perspective. And then to have personal experience where your story gets cut for those kind of reasons, he was angry, I think, is a place to describe where this story comes from. So from there, the other part is King Hell Heroica is like his comics universe that he was putting together. And he had several volumes planned. Max Immortal's another graphic novel in that series. But Brat Pack was the first one that he wrote and drew, even though I think it's planned to be like volume 4 in an incomplete series of these graphic novels. With Max Immortal, I think, is volume 1, which came out in like 93 or so after this, in full color. A beautiful book on its own.
Yeah.
But this is setting the table for this whole universe that he has in mind.
Yeah, and Max Immortal will be like his kind of Superman analog, and we'll see, Erzat's versions of the different kinds of superhero archetypes in here, and all the stuff you just said about it means nothing, like making a good comic and creating stories with talent means very little to the Marvel or DC system. That came to mind without any of that context stuff, the real world context stuff in mind, after you read this, because it is a very satisfying unit and it tells a complete story. And when we get to certain parts like, the indoctrination sequences, how long would that take in a Marvel DC comic? You know what I'm saying? This is a very satisfying, tight unit, and Marvel and DC is just meant to be churned every month, forever. It's like the Image guys had it all figured out, where it's just draw a bunch of cool shit every month and sell it, because as stories, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's interesting that they really are the apex of that Marvel DC model in that regard. Characters aren't growing or developing or changing or going anywhere. In the Image stuff, year one, totally the apex of that. Brat Pack, not so much. There's a story here for sure.
Yeah.
We start out, we mentioned Max Immortal, the Superman character. We start out the story, he's gone. He left the world 10 years ago, and as a result, the world has really taken a dark turn. And this city is Slumberg. I think he could have done maybe something different on that name, but this is a scummy, think of maybe, I don't know, New York City in the 70s, whatever the bottom of the drugs, crime, vice, all of that stuff is just full of this city and hopeless. A lot of the captions that you see here, it's a radio DJ, and this is used, I think, in each issue as kind of a framing device to kind of intro, set things up, create a certain mood. In this case, a caller calls in and asks about the Brat Pack, the teenage sidekicks, and if everybody's kind of sick of them. And sure enough, everybody is. It's a pretty critical talk show talking about how we'd be better off without them and nobody likes them and would they just go away already.
It's fun thinking about the zeitgeist, too, because shock jocks were sort of in prominence in like 1990. You know, Stuttering John is going to the red carpets asking Sharon Stone crazy questions and shit. So it's like that's built into this part of the thing. And the stuff that you say about Slumberg, like throughout the book, there will be emotionally written parts and sequences from Rick Veach that are just so on the nose that you know that he's talking about somebody, or you know what I mean, like a specific situation. That's sprinkled in here.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It works for me. I like this framing device. It does set things up, and now we cut to this church, which plays a pivotal role. This priest, we're going to learn, is connected to these superheroes and to these sidekicks. We see one coming in here. We also see him with an altar boy who's going to play a prominent role in the story. And this is kind of a, like I said, we're going to come back to this church again and again throughout this series. It's where characters are going to meet and hook up and congregate. And we get our first look at these various sidekicks as they show up. This is Chippy, Wild Boy, showing up with a six-pack in hand on his floating skateboard.
Yeah, and he's using all of the Spicoli, Fast Times at Ridgemont High kind of speak.
They're talking about Dr. Blasphemy. He's still alive, it turns out, who's like their big enemy.
And what happened here is the little altar boy, he found some heavy explosives in the trash can behind the church there.
Kid Vicious, another one of the sidekicks, having trouble going to the bathroom, like peeing blood. You can see we're going to find out he has all kinds of drug, steroid type issues.
Because it's Brat Pack and I feel like it's apropos, I do have just a quick story, man. When I was...
That's not a good start.
When I was... I would be a extra in all the movies and shit that would happen here in Pittsburgh. And when those Hollywood guys would come through town, they would while out, man. And in fact, there's a dude who's getting roasted right now, man. Had to use the bathroom one day, and the main director of fight choreography rolled in, and I knew that he was busy, so I was like, "No, go ahead of me, man." And he went to the urinal, and he was like, and he was like in this pose as he's pissing, and the entire bathroom smelled like an ingrown toenail, or like he definitely. I know what gonorrhea smells like now.
Oh. Man, is that perfect for Brat Pack?
Yeah.
I feel like if you could have scented comics, that would be the right scent to put on this book. And then finally, Luna is the last of them. So it's four main characters, or four main sidekicks, part of four main superheroes that we're going to follow throughout this comic. And there'll be some really interesting storytelling stuff that Rick Veach does with that, starting in issue 2 or almost like a chapter 2. These issues, by the way, read very much as like broken down, satisfactory. One issue is almost like Origins, which he does a very good job with, and we'll talk about when we get there. But, like each issue feels not self-contained, but very satisfying, like a chapter in a book. The sidekicks don't get along very well. You see they're fighting amongst themselves. They're a very unlikable group. And especially at this point in time, I don't know how long they've been the sidekicks, but probably I'm guessing a year or so, because we're going to see another cycle and they run a year or so before they get to this stage of bitter and broken down and disgusting. Just all the problems you could possibly put on a group of adolescents, they have.
Putting it mildly.
And this is Dr. Blasphemy. And one of the things that he's doing is playing this radio broadcast where everybody in Slumberg is just calling in and talking about how terrible these characters are. Or these people, I guess, within the context of the story. Blasphemy's the best, right?
Great costume. This crazy, he doesn't have a fully fleshed out here, but like when we see it later, it's very much like a splayed vagina with like a clit nose and stuff. Like I think even like look at this.
Right.
You know? Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, what a striking character. Again, in a time, I'm reading this in a time of Image Comics. These character designs all worked. They all look good.
Yeah, and each of these sidekicks corresponds with a different kind of superhero archetype. And you see like little Chippy is kind of your Robin, and you'll have your anti-hero kid, that's like the cowboy hat boy. I don't like. There's that Radman or whatever.
You know what that is? That's Green Arrow and Speedy in terms of visual sort of stuff.
Right.
The personalities vary a little bit, because we have the guy that's, I think, supposed to be Captain America, Judge Jury, feels much more like the Punisher to me.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of blurring.
I think he fits like the anti-hero, like you said, like a Punisher.
The Mink is one of those characters. He's basically the Batman, and this is his car. And the sidekicks are worried because their heroes are off in some other city for, I don't know, a conference of some sort. Probably knowing what we know, they're signing licensing deals or something. But it shouldn't be here is the bottom line. So they realize something's wrong. They go to investigate, and something's very wrong. It's packed with explosives. The blasting caps and explosives that the Altar Boy had found earlier are signs of boxes of the remnants of them. Well, there's a reason for that.
And on the radio show, all the people of Slumberg are like, yeah, fuck the Brat Pack, they're lame. And the caller's like, what should we do about them? And they're like, yeah, blow them up, kill them, whatever. And he's like, oh, do you really mean that? And they're like, oh, yeah, kill them all. Like, who cares a shit? And he's like, okay. Hangs up and does the deed. Oh, it's almost like the radio show is like test marketing, you know?
Yeah, it really, really is. And we find out Dr. Blasphemy is the person that got that whole radio talk show started. Like, he was the guy that called in and solicited everybody's opinions on it.
And things
City
just
to Brat Pack, drop dead.
And things just go downhill from here as we follow this little guy through the rest of the tale.
Yeah, one of them's not dead. Ugh. Not too good looking, though. Not leaving a good body behind. Priest is performing his duties, at the funeral, and we're going to find out this priest is very culpable in all of this.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing. Like he's like the initiator. Like he's the induction point to bring fresh meat to the superheroes.
Blood on his hands, and one of the caskets breaks open, and it's just pieces. It's so great. Like, it's over the top, obviously. It's R-rated, it's grim, it's satirical, and Veach just goes, man. Like, he goes concept, and then he goes one step further in execution. And thank you for that, Rick.
Yeah, for sure.
I really appreciate that as a reader. So here we are at the end, and you see the heroes now come and confront this priest, and it's like, well, we're not done, man. We're gonna need another crop of sidekicks. Deliver us some children. Priest watering down his holy water or his wine with some whiskey. He's in his own dark place.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
And that's basically the end of issue 1. Brat Pack has been murdered by Dr. Blasphemy, and now it's a matter of where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. And you see Tundra's logo. This is where it appears on this book. One of the more interesting comics I think Tundra produces, it's still around here today in different editions, but Brat Pack has lived on and certainly has a long lifeline stemming from Tundra.
I give mad respect to anybody that I see a Tundra logo on their book, because it means they didn't take Kevin Eastman's money and run. You know what I'm saying? These are the good guys.
It also represents a real dedication, because, that was inmates running the asylum. So if you were going to produce a 5-issue coherent series, you were doing it.
Yeah, up to you, man. Nobody's
That's
holding
work
you accountable.
ethic, it's discipline, it's all those vision, it's all the things you need to make a comic.
Yeah, Kevin Eastman is busy on some other things, man. He's got new toys to design and shit like that. Like, it's up to you to show him proof.
As I move through each of these issues, take note of the covers. They're so strong. Like, you mentioned exploitation art, and there's a long history of that, from lurid book covers to movie posters. These covers, man, are a part of that history. Really striking images, each one.
Yeah.
And a note, Gary Fields letters this. Veach does almost everything, but not the lettering. So Gary Field, tip of the hat to you. And we're back in Slumberg. The radio DJ, by the way, is about crucified from callers the next day once all of this comes out with Brat Pack, and he's like, "Hey man, we were just talking. Don't blame me for this happening."
What's very interesting is that there are there are pages that are excised from the collections, like these 3 pages that we've seen so far.
This is the last page in book 1.
Sure, right, and then you see,
yeah, he puts in a lot of these like 2-page piece because then you get into. It's 2 pages is what's added in the trade paperback.
Right, I see.
And it comes in between a lot of these issues. He also rewrites some of it. Mm-hmm. And I think he even redraws some of it. It's a little bit harder to pick out because it's still within the context of this original setup. But he does add maybe, 8 or 10 pages. And it's usually between these chapters. And it's usually a little bit more maybe on the superheroes.
I see.
Giving us a behind-the-scenes peek of what they're doing through this activity.
When we did the Rick Veach shoot interview, he talked about his love of Kirby, and we see a little bit of Kirby collage in that panel right there, with like a 42nd Street kind of vibe.
Yeah, I like that. And obviously, like, New York is...
Yeah, the Flatiron Building and True Man, and that's Max Immortal stuff. Like, we'll be talking about that sometime.
Yeah, it's interesting how the Max Immortal mythology is so much a part of this book, since he hasn't actually done that story yet, but has a very clear idea of what it is. I mean, it's really, in a way, this is the origin of, the return of True Man and Max Immortal, what we're eventually going to see in that character. But his absence, I guess, is the main driving force. And
everything that the radio program exhibited in the first episode, everybody's taken a step back now that their dreams were all come true. Everybody's very reflective and sad about the demise of Brat Pack.
Here's this zombie remnants feeding on pigeons that they can get in the bell tower of the church.
Yeah.
Great imagery, man. Very dark.
And notice that it's only one of the sidekicks is left up there.
Mink is desperate there, going to confront the Padre, who's he found, and he's trying to resist. The priest really wants out of this relationship, this cycle of never-ending violence and depravity, but that's a lot of pressure is being applied.
Right, and the dialogue, like, talk about sort of over the top. This is a sadistic. It's all implied, but let's just say Frederick Wortham was right.
Yes. Yeah, that's another piece of the puzzle behind all of this. And it's definitely mentioned in Bisset's book about this. Frederick Wortham and Seduction of the Innocent is certainly part of the material that he's pulling from or referencing. And this guy, Cody, the altar boy, worst possible timing. He's there. He wants to be the next Chippy. And guess what? Mink happens to be there looking for one. So no matter how good Father's trying to be, what are you going to do? It's almost unstoppable at that point.
Great sequence where the kid is going to confession and the Mink is in the booth with the Padre as the boy is sort of putting his name in the hat to try to be a future sidekick. While the priest is like, no, you don't want that. But then the Mink is like, no, fuck that. I want this little guy.
Yeah, send this dude to my house. Send this dude to my quarters. So this is the part that I talked about, one of the interesting storytelling devices that Rick Veach employs.
Great.
We're going to follow 4 different characters as they become the new Brat Pack and beyond. Once they become the Brat Pack, we'll continue this. But each of these books now follows this formula of having kind of an opening segment or a scene that's, like a bigger scene that happens in continuity. And then we get to this point where he breaks it up and we follow each character through almost like comic strips, where you get like half of a page. And then we go to the next character and their story for half of a page. And most of them end in something of, I don't know if cliffhanger is the right word, but it's mid-story where it's like, I need to know what happens next. But each one of these, it's an amazing act as a narrative that he's able to keep those plates spinning where like each one does end on a moment of like, okay, I need to see the next strip.
And upon this reread, as cartoonists who have produced, hundreds of pages, maybe 1,000 pages in our own right, you could break it down a little bit and like understand what Veach is doing here. So this is like your this page intro sequence, and they each thematically mirror each other in terms of like what the broad suggestion of what's happening is, but each character going through their own version of that. So you got the rich boy, you got the kid, like, you know, the super poor dude whose parents are crackheads or whatever. You have the nubile girl, and then you have future Chippy, the altar boy. So they're from different kind of economic stratum, you know, different places in society, and we're going to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, and all of them unhappy. Like they're all struggling with something in their situations. And, you know, ultimately whenever they're not getting along, it's because none of them understand or empathize with each other, even though they've all come from some sort of trials and tribulations and unhappiness.
Yeah. We got the boy who's like the product of like addict parents. We have the girl who is being sort of bombarded with the ideas of like, you know, like your sexual vitality or your sexual worth is like your main attribute. Rich boy who's like aimless, like latchkey kid, but can get any kind of toys he wants. All right for the pickings, man.
Yeah, extremely vulnerable. It's the perfect age. This would also apply if you were, say, a cult leader and looking to you know, add to your flock. Same kind of thing. Like these are impressionable young people who need something. They're missing something in their life, and the father delivers them to a bunch of heroes that have a perfect need for them. And you can see issue 2 here, glossy paper. Yes. So it was an upgrade that happened pretty early on in this in the life of Brat Pack. The comics exist too within this world, a little bit of a meta element, and kind of the heart of this story in some ways. Mm-hmm. I might not have known it reading it at this stage, but we're going to see that representations of these characters do exist in this world, whether it's toys, comics, you know, movies, whatever.
Yeah, that's a through line of the Veach bibliography too. Like comics is never far from, you know, the surface of his work, and honestly, it's something that I'm interested in bringing into the thing too, man. You read enough novels, and you find out that every novel you read has a character who's a writer in it. So why not have some comic book shit in your comics?
You see that with movies too. Like anytime there's a movie with something about movie making, it's always favored in the Academy Awards. We love to see ourselves in it. So this is them meeting their heroes for the first time. Big, giant moment, and how each one kind of approaches it differently, both the sidekick and the hero themselves.
Yeah, how disturbing. Like, the mink comes, visits the boy in his bedroom, is just sitting at the edge of his bed. How cool is the guilty hammer? You know what I'm saying? I think it's awesome. That should be a piece of merchandise.
And then the floating skateboard for the kid who was bound to the skateboard with wheels. Yeah, it all adds up. It all sounds kind of good. Well, maybe not Judge Jury.
That kid, he jumps in the deep end, man.
Yeah, by the way, he was checking Nazi books out of the library 2 pages earlier, so like...
Straight up apt pupil.
Yeah, he may be looking for that kind of discipline.
And then that superhero chick, whatever her name is, man, she's like, you know, she's a seductress. And you know, she's a sexy lady and is all about using... you know, her physical attributes to her advantage in battle and stuff.
Yeah, and after judging this young lady and her assets, she says, "Don't fret, I know a plastic surgeon who works miracles with silicone."
Yeah.
It's so dark instantly. There's no grace period. There's no honeymoon. It is like, you're coming with me, and we're going to make you into what I want you to be.
And that's, as a storytelling piece, like, this initiation... It happens perfectly. Like it's very full, and you sort of buy into the brainwash of each of these. Like, imagine just like making one story where you have to figure out how to like brainwash a person, and you have to like figure out how to do that. But Rick Veach is so sick; he was able to sell you on 4 different brainwashing sequences, man.
None of them feel weak either.
That's what I'm saying. They're very satisfying, and it's like you buy them.
So at this point in their origin stories, all of their parents die.
Right, yeah.
Leaving them basically orphaned or in the charge of these superheroes. And it's perfect. Yeah, nobody's going to defend these kids or there's nowhere for them to go back to, like their homes are done as a result of the loss of their parents. And it varies how they all die. They all die by whatever means they were living. The addicts overdose, the poor people, their house burns down or whatever. The rich guy, there's an assassination on them. It's kind of what you, again, it's perfect.
It's perfect is exactly what was on my mind thinking about that part. And it's like, all right, kids, you now have motivation 101 to go put a cape on.
And they don't connect this. They're not working together at this point. They'll connect it maybe towards the end of issue 5, basically the end of the story. They realize like, oh yeah, who do you think killed our parents? But at this point, they're just a damaged kid on their own with a superhero standing next to them, telling them whatever the superhero wants to tell them.
And just wait until we go on to our first missions.
So good.
Yeah.
So issue 3 here, I have issue 3 as Origins, even though probably issue 2, what we just saw, was a lot of Origin material. This reminds me of James O'Barr's The Crow.
For sure. That's an Iggy Pop chest if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, there's definitely an image. Yes. Well said. All right. Again, we start out with our opening sequence, and there's probably some extra pages here, Ed, if you want to share those. So this is your end of issue 2. These are the extra pages that were added from the very beginning, too. Like, these are in the first collection. And, again, it's mostly just more of the superheroes and showing what they're doing. And, I don't know, once you read the story, the miniseries, you know their backstory. Some of this is a little bit more secret in the miniseries, but they're businessmen, and they're working together. And none of this is accidental, what's happening with the Brat Pack. And after a very brief intro, we break into continued training. The 4-part sequence continues. Talk about different lives that they get to go lead. Like Chippy, the altar boy. The Mink is this is where it blurs a little bit for me. The Mink seems like Batman has a big mansion set up, but he's also a publisher of like a Playboy kind of magazine empire. So a little bit different. Whereas King Rad, Wild Boy's superhero, he has like a weapons company, which is more in line with, Batman Wayne Industries, or even Iron Man was something I saw some parallels with. So, over time, I guess these characters within Marvel and DC have become a little bit more solid in how they're constructed now that you have billion-dollar movies and things built around them. In a weird way, this thing works as well now, maybe better than it did even in 1990.
Oh, I agree. All that you would do differently is replace the radio stuff with Twitter posts or whatever.
Yeah, that part for sure. Judge Jury appears to be an undercover cop there, freeing Kid Vicious, who was in police custody, as a suspect in the murder of his parents.
How great of a name is Kid Vicious, by the way?
It all works pretty well. We get to see Moon Mistress outside of her costume when Luna shows up, and it is not a pretty sight.
No, she's totally used up, withered, an old crone, and then you discover that she is the impossibly old age of 27.
Wow.
And we watch her get dressed, and just a little tuck here, a little boost there, so a little lipstick here, a wig there, and now she's the seductress that we all know and love from the cover of Cosmo magazine or whatever. And Chippy, the altar boy, going to live at the rich dude's house with all these naked chicks, and there's all this media there sort of promoting his entry, like the publisher guy, Malcolm Maplethorpe, whatever his name is, did good. He bought a kid. And as soon as the media goes away, that's when they get to business.
I love this part with Judge Jury dropping the steroids into the future Kid Vicious's ass, saying, you're going to need all the strength you can get, and refers to his breakfast of champions. Yeah, it's... as I said, this is the issue I think of as Origin. They're in training at this point to become the sidekicks that are going to make up Brat Pack.
Yeah, and then of course the Rad Man or whatever, they're the druggies of the crew. They're the Michelangelo of this foursome.
Very Kirby-esque, I think, this character's design for Moon Mistress.
Yeah, for sure.
Feels like something out of the Fourth World.
Absolutely, man. And that Kid Vicious, like, it's just, that's the most brutal of them all. Because he started off as this little rich boy, little soft, chicken-hearted rich boy, and he's just getting pummeled and his teeth kicked out, and, you know, now he's on roids, and he's thanking judge, jury for the opportunity. Just wait till you see their goddamn vehicle.
That's the truth. This is a pretty great... This is like the splash page version of all of those strips. Really effective, I think. And they're just tough badasses, right? They're going to tear new assholes. They're going to off with their heads. They're just out there molten lead.
This is all their taglines. You know, like this would be on their cereal box covers.
And I love this unironically whenever I read it, whenever I was, 14 or something.
I feel like Alex Ross learned a little bit from the lighting here,
That's
man.
beautiful, right?
Totally.
Man, Veach is so good at so much, I think sometimes it's taken for granted. He draws everything in this series. Mm-hmm. And very, very well.
Designs amazing vehicles and stuff.
This is the most brutal, man. You were talking about Kid Vicious. It's basically a walk of glass, broken glass, and he's going to crawl over it with Judge Jury standing on his back. I thought of you, Ed. I thought of Red Room.
Yeah.
You know how comedians will farm out like joke writing and stuff? I feel like you could talk to Rick Veach maybe for some Red Room
Just let me take a look at the Notebook.
Yes. But they emerge, pretty much on the other side, ready to go. At the end of the glass crawl is the costume.
And the boy is radicalized.
Yes, that's a good word for it. Perfect. Calls him puke over and over.
And the kid thanks him all the time. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, sir. We're getting to the vehicles.
All right. This has to be fun for Veach or any aspiring superhero artist when you get to design like all of the. These are the toys.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Like even Spider-Man had a Spider-Mobile.
Indeed, man. There's some fun stuff here. So, really, the Batwing, what we're seeing with the Mink's plane, a little bit of Watchmen too. It feels like the owl a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And he's still continuing to play around with the Kirby collage technique with the backgrounds there.
Yeah, it looks so good in black and white. Really effective.
Yeah.
We have the Moon Mistress is in her moon lunar themed ship.
Well, she co-opted that from NASA because she fucked an astronaut. Like everything about her is about fucking people and, turning their attention away from the task at hand. It's all about sex.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what she's teaching the girl.
Yeah.
The little kid.
That is the indoctrination of the text. And then as we progress, we get to see it in action.
Exactly.
Good storytelling in that regard, too. It's like, say what you're going to do, then do it, and then recap.
Well, how about when these vehicles start to mingle, where we have these individual stories, and then they will fold into one another, page after page at a certain point, and then become their own single thing again. That's maestro shit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, I mean, look, he's coming off of years of doing a monthly book at DC, like from a craft, and think of the work he did before that, stuff like Epic and Heavy Metal in places. This guy's a master craftsman.
15-year career.
And now he's inspired. Like he's coming off of DC and wanting to show the world some stuff. It's coming together, man. Rocket ship, really cool. And then you alluded to this one, Judge Jury ship. It's a flying burning cross.
What the fuck? It's so ridiculous.
And the thing is, like, Judge Jury gets compared to, Captain America, as I said.
Does he really?
He does.
I find that so crazy.
Well, it's almost like a Puritan kind of set of values that would have predated what we think of as Captain America in a lot of ways. But I can't help seeing the Punisher. Like, that's
Totally.
who I see in it.
Like it's Judge Dredd. I mean, it's pure Old Testament draconian fucking punishment.
Yes.
If you jaywalk, your Achilles tendon might get cut.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
this is a beautiful spread.
Where the vehicles now fold into one another so that each of the superheroes gets a little taste of all the other ones, and you get some sense on what they think about each other.
Really good stuff.
Know, look at these druggies, look at these whores, look at these fascists.
Panel after panel, too, of awesomeness. Dynamic. The Kirby backgrounds that you talk about, the collage style backgrounds all look great with them. But I love this, like the Mink mobile just scooting across a couple feet above the ground. You see its shadow real close underneath. It's awesome, man. What a great spread. A lot of very dynamic, a lot of action, and continuing this interaction where they're all sort of together, even though from a narrative standpoint, we get to see each of their perspectives on each other and how they fit in all of this. And I have to say that Burning Cross ship, it's a striking design.
Yeah, because like going along with it are the poses of like them just standing like with authority on top of them, like they are the judge and the jury.
There was a Alan Moore talked a lot around this time period about the concept of superhero as fascist.
Yeah,
and I think that's probably what is informing.
Oh, for sure.
This character, this decision, all of it, and to the nth degree, this is another one of those examples of Veach has this great idea and then he just pushes it. Like this is a 10. Like all of this is turned up to, or an 11, like he's breaking the knob off at max volume for all of this stuff.
And that's Kirby proportions for that face.
Yeah. Do you think these page layouts are at all a reference to Neil Adams? He would do those crazy page references, especially like his X-Men, for example. And that was kind of in vogue for a while, but it made storytelling hard, and I feel like it didn't catch on the way certain tropes in comics do. But when I think of like kind of weird panel shapes and stuff, that's where I think of. I know he's not the guy that invented it or whatever, but just in my mind.
Like, you follow the Veach bibliography, it's rarely ever a grid. Any of his personal work, man, like look at the Heartburst graphic novel, look at Abraxas, like any of the stuff in Heavy Metal or Epic Illustrated. Bissett talked about it on our shoot, like fuck the rectangle. I hate the rectangle. And Neil Adams like set it down initially. You read those Neil Adams stuff, and I think we'll probably have to go through some of that shit on here eventually. You can't read every page properly. Right. These guys are good storytellers and play with these weird geometric rhombus shaped panels and stuff. So it's like they perfected the Neil Adams thing.
Blasphemous is such a graphic achievement. He works so well. He looks so good.
A walking piece of profanity.
It's such a perfect character design, and still continuing to torment this poor survivor from the original Brat Pack group. And the tongue, just disgusting.
Yeah.
He's so good at making this stuff feel gross. All right, with that, we conclude issue 3. Some extra pages in that one?
Surely.
So this is your wrap-up of issue 3, and these are the extra pages. And again, it's the superheroes.
Yeah.
That's really what's being added in most of these extra pages. And in this sequence in particular, they're reading the letters column. One of the letter writers has pissed them off with some criticism of these characters or other. And we see King Rad's like butler guy also reading it in the foreground. Get a shot of the iconic cover, the cover that he would use on the first trade paperback collection. And I wonder about the subsequent trade paperbacks and him not using it, if he may have felt this was too graphic to put on the cover of a book.
I'm sure he didn't, but the retailers, his retail buddies may have had some suggestions, because like the first time I ever saw this was while we were recording an episode. And when you slap this down, and I see camel toe, I see nutsacks in Crown Royal fucking velvet bags. Striking image, to say the least.
Yeah, great glove. He's so good with all the textures and the drawing stuff. It's easy to lose that whenever you're looking at this cover, but still drawing perfect.
Yeah.
I love this too with the marquees, just graphically. And I love that slogan, the live fast, love hard, die with your mask on. Really kind of a cool piece. I can remember it in ads and things.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. So the priest is completely breaking down at this point. The Brat Pack's back in action. They've come back to life, and the priest is just hopeless. You really appreciate, in this situation, you really appreciate the character design for Chippy's mask, because the way the cuts are
it's always a look of concern.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It always looks like the eyebrows are furrowed up. Like in a... He looks vulnerable.
Yes. Very innocent.
And the mink, like, is bringing him there to just reassure the priest that everything's okay. But when you see this panel with that smile and that look of concern on his face, you get the impression that they might be lying.
Yeah. Yeah, that priest is hitting rock bottom, and whenever the mink does show up, the priest has made some decisions. He's done with this kind of lifestyle, and he shoots the mink.
Now this is the part where we get to magical realism. It was all a realistic story before. Now we're getting to the supernatural.
Great blood, though. I love the blood coming out of Mink's mouth, and then whenever he kisses the priest with all the blood coming everywhere, like...
When I look at these...
What a visual.
When you look at these values, it makes me wonder if, like, the pages are really in color.
They can't be, or that would have surfaced. Like, we would know it if these were in color.
Yeah, I guess.
There's textures, though. Like, I think about it digitally, you know, with Procreate especially. It's so easy on an iPad to do all these different textures and things. To think of doing this on paper, it blows me away. Like, there's so much media, I think, that he's using there. Some of the texture that he's getting, it's like, it's graphite or charcoal or dry brush.
It's a mixture of everything. There's color pencil on here.
Yeah, it's really something, man.
Always got the package too, like a big ass bulge.
That's been written about and joked about for so long with comics, and especially with the Marvel DC superhero comics. Whether there is one or isn't one, usually there isn't one. And this is where we start to see like more is going on, as you say, with the mink walking away after getting shot with an Uzi. It's kind of like, what is happening? Even Chippy is kind of like, what's going on here?
Shouldn't I take you to the hospital? And he's like, oh, no big deal, man. And this issue, this is a mission number 1 for the sidekicks, man.
Yeah.
Let's introduce them to the world.
This gets awesome.
Yeah, and it's if you think you needed a shower after the first couple issues, man, you definitely need a shower after mission 1, because we're gonna throw the girl sidekick to the wolves. You know, there's a football game going on, and it's getting out of hand. So they're going to throw, like, the coquette, sexy girl in the mix with all these testosterone-seething he-men. And they're going to start ripping at her.
This is a hostage situation that King Rat is going to go and take over. And basically, it's people who are against obscene literature are holding up this library. This is what he's bringing this missile to. And
he's telling the kid, hey, kid, who gives a fuck?
Yeah, there are hostage. There's at least one hostage, and the kid's troubled by it. And so he's like, well, I'll give you a head start if you can rescue the hostage before I shoot this missile.
You got 30 seconds. Rescue him, and, you know, if that clears your conscience, but you got 30 seconds.
And finally, Judge Jury, really driving home the dirty part, they're at the gigantic, like, solid waste dump site. I think they defined this. Veach earlier, you know, says this is like the biggest dump site or the oldest dump site or whatever in the world. It's just disgusting. Basically miles of waste. And these people are poor people digging through it for heavy metals.
Right.
Judge Jury is extremely racist and hates them. And that's basically their crime. Like, I don't know that they're even committing a crime exactly.
Well, you know, it's the, you know, they come into the city, no money, no green card. So it's, you know, it's illegal immigrants and
there you go.
All that sort of thing, man. He's not gonna stand for that.
So, and then I guess we should say, like, the Mink's mission, despite being shot full of holes, there's an AIDS crisis center that's being just kind of rioters are attacking and breaking windows and stuff. They're going to stop them. Which is funny because you think of, like, the xenophobia of Judge Jury. He has to be homophobic as well. Like, he and Mink have to be deadly enemies.
Well, you know who catches the brunt of it is poor Chippy from all the other superheroes, because they make all sorts of homophobic jokes and shit at Chippy, implying, you know, like, you know, molestation and that sort of energy. So just to add another level of creepiness. to our terror tale.
This is great too, because it's not enough that these guys are trying to get heavy metals and going through the garbage to do so. Judge Jury brings his own gold bar and throws it into the waste, and then tells his sidekick, hey, that's my gold bar they're going after. You got to go get it back for me.
Yeah.
Like he's he's fixing the game. He's cheating. Like none of those people were stealing his gold until he threw the gold in there. So we see everybody in action at this point, and it's just dark. Man, is it dark. The setups, Veach does a great job of making clear the setups and the goals and the situation, and then like whatever happens is going to be nasty at that point. And of course it is.
A little castration.
Moon Mistress, basically describes these men as all rapists, except that's not what they were doing until you threw a girl into the middle of it.
Well, they're going to get theirs.
They all do. Yeah, they definitely do. And again, it's going to make sense with reveals in issue 5. All of this kind of setup where they're creating these scenarios to put their sidekicks not only in danger, but to have them do heroic acts. It's all constructed by these heroes, manipulated by these heroes for a reason. It's so gross.
Look at this, man. We have a successful hostage rescue right here.
Very heroic.
Turn the page.
Look, he got out just in the nick of time, right? He's so happy he pulled him out of the exploding building. You're a hero. A hero. A hero.
Oh, it's so wild. You don't forget this comic after you read it, Jim.
No, you don't. No, absolutely not. He gets his gold. Mink takes one of the riders, and it's what he does to him bothers Chippy so much he has to walk away from it. Moon Mistress gives Luna one of the dude's balls. It's like, you're on the team now, kid. Here's your trophy. Yeah. Wow.
And Kid Vicious got the gold bar, if any of you guys were wondering.
Yeah, and as if all of this isn't enough, what we've just seen, in the very beginning, before Kid Vicious is Kid Vicious, his only friend companion is the girl that works for him. His parents are always away on business. She invites him to dinner with her family because he seems so lonely. Guess what? She's an immigrant, and she was there trying to find her father to bring him home. Judge Jury does not like that, and why do you know this? Why do you know this part? Do you have relationships with her, Kid Vicious? It makes him turn his back on her and let her sink down into the slime.
Yes. You got to cut off your entire past, man, if you want to be on this superhero team. Little dude's kind of sad about the gore that he just witnessed. The girl is a little PTSD'd from getting grabbed on by all those.
Yeah, this was a tough night for everybody.
Yes.
Man, they all lost some innocence this night. And King Rad, victims. I'm always tripping over them. Ask me if I give a shit. This is in regards to the hostage whose legs and arms were blown off. But that is, trial by fire. That is their christening into this lifestyle.
Yeah. And this page is the superhero origins.
Which all center around Max Immortal, True Man.
Yeah.
They all have some connections there.
And this is what we all know about, the world's finest right there. That panel right there.
Yeah, it's pretty neat the way he ties into all of these characters. Like the military weapons guy, he's a super soldier, True Man. Lover shares his blood with Mink because Mink gets AIDS, and so his superhuman blood allows him to stay healthy and basically be immortal. It's just all these connections. There's another one of those wild page spreads.
Yeah.
What a layout. Having the characters' faces, the main heroes there in the middle circle.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that when Veach was designing this stuff, he was doing it in spreads.
The Selena, the note for the Moon Mistress, I keep thinking of Dark Knight Returns, the aged Catwoman after the Joker leaves her tied up for Batman to find.
Right.
Feels like obviously Veach would have known all these comics inside and out. Feels like there's some, references here and there of that sort to a lot of important comics history. or at least superhero.
So the mink is like, yeah, I have some super blood in me. What do you say, Chippy?
Yep, I can do the same for you. Yeah. This is how I survive Father Dunn shooting me full of bullet holes. And Kid Vicious turning his back on his only friend.
And then, like, the least of the crimes of Brat Pack is, King Rad hooking an underage boy up with some beer.
The least of it.
Got a little transfusion going on with the mink and the boy, and those other Brat Packers are not gonna. They know something's up.
This is pretty cool too. What runs through the back of all of these? We've kind of glossed over it, pointing out Tundra logo, but each issue has a little bit of Veach history and comics history specifically. And this is where current Chippy realizes this was the remnants, the remainder of the last Brat Pack, because he had the blood infusion too.
Yeah.
He didn't die in that explosion in issue 1, but didn't totally recover either.
But congratulations, kid, you're immortal. You're just that from now on.
This is a great image of holding the mask up, and it still lines up with his eye.
Yeah.
It's really neat. Kind of the sideways of superheroes and what they really are like, according to Brat Pack.
Last issue?
Final issue.
This is a good new piece if it's not in there, man. It's the Brat Packers at a comic convention.
This is really cool. Yeah, they're there to do public appearance, to do signings, and man, they're such a motley group. At this point, they are on the job.
Solidified into their positions of like their superhero archetype.
Silicone's been implanted, scars have been earned, addictions have been fed. Pretty dark stuff. And this is like multiple pages that are coming in here as extras. And this is where the Brat Packers see Chippy exposed as being like, this dude just put a crowbar through your heart and you're still walking away. They have like a non-violence clause for this appearance, but of course that falls away once people start attacking them.
Yes.
And you see all the merchandise that none of this didn't exist for Batman and Super. Like this is all, you can find real world versions of all of that.
Right.
And we're back to our radio station. They're reporting on weird weather patterns. This reminded me of things like that we're experiencing today. Whether it's fires and storms and temperature. It's all there. So Slumberg is experiencing, and most of the world is experiencing these extreme weather conditions. The radio says, there's a solar flare that stretches out past Jupiter that Earth is passing through. It's end of the world kind of stuff. You see the lightning in all the images that have sky visible. It's dark times. Father Dunn now is in the role that we saw Blasphemy in the beginning.
Yes.
With a noose around his neck, ready to end it all.
In order to have a story, you need to have an arc. And when we first saw these two, he was but a lowly altar boy. Things have changed.
Yeah, he's learned a lot in a year, and Father's not getting off this easy.
Look at the kid's pockmarked chest.
Oh man, Scar, he's starting to look like Mink.
Yeah.
All scarred up. Such dark territory. Takes a drink of Father's drink and then breaks the bottle over his face.
What I realized too is like the mask, it's not like the Robin Domino mask from the comics. It's like the Burt Ward, Adam West mask.
Good call, yeah. That is 100% right. But the father gives up a little bit of information here, and that's what causes the violent outburst. Is he says, you guys have to exist because of contracts that these superheroes have. It's how they make their money. And without the sidekicks, the money stops. And that's what some of that extra material details.
Yeah.
Those contracts and the contract negotiations and yeah. It really takes that turn of, we talk about meta with like Grant Morrison's Animal Man or something. There's a lot of meta elements here where you're talking about cartoon characters that are being exploited to young consumers. Pretty fun. So
this is like a spread of atrocities. We have the Chippy confrontation with the priest, the sidekick girl, that coat hanger's there for a reason.
Oh, and if you're not sure about it, she spells out. It's very clear why it's there, and not the first time. And
it's some crazy. It's like, what happens, when one of these guys I'm teasing gets through the costume and it's the wrong time of the month. Like it's fucking brutal language.
She goes on to say it could have been one of theirs.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I think.
Holy fuck!
Yeah.
Jesus Christ!
Heck, it could have been any of you guys except for Cody. Ha ha ha.
Poor Chippy. Go back one, because I want to point out the crack pipe.
Yeah.
Look at that shit, man. That's. He might have referenced Chris Rock from New Jack City on that one, and then
he can't even talk. By the way, this is going to be the level of his dialogue through the rest of this issue. Just stammering, kind of but no, but.
And once again, man, 1990, 91, like I was a little kid, like watching the news with mom, and like all you would see is crackhead shit. And like putting those people on the camera and having them stammer and talk their shit. And then look at like fully unrecognizable to the little rich boy that he was, man.
This reminds me so much of wrestlers, especially when you hear about them, abusing pain pills and stuff like that. Crippling pain every day of his life.
This right here, is it like the cotton at the top of a pill bottle or something?
I can't tell what it is. It looks like it's the pill bottle has been bitten or chewed or something, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't totally make sense to me, but the rest of it's very clear. The missing teeth, the scarred up face.
Yeah. And then weave everybody in together again with this sequence. They're all in the same place.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they gathered there. If it was by randomness or if someone drew them in, because of course we're going to pretty soon see signs.
Yeah. Of
our old nemesis, Dr. Blasphemy.
Yeah, like the way I read it, this is like the Chippy confrontation, like all the stuff that they sort of behind the scenes gathered together and were like, we need to fucking confront Chip. We need to get hold of him. We need to get a little bit of whatever he got.
Right.
First off, he's more popular than all of us, so that sucks. and we're putting our lives on the line, and we're getting janked up. But they could tell that there's something more to what he's got going on.
Man, they hate him. And sure enough, Dr. Blasphemy is there with the remote control coffin. He wheels in and plays the organ. It's a great villain.
It is. It's very Dr. Phoebes.
And now they're going to play the game Truth or Consequences. The truth, I guess, being possibly in this coffin that has come wheeling down the aisle.
Yeah, and it all feels familiar.
The truth is going to set them free. This is when they start to piece together, how they ended up in this position with all their dead parents. What a coincidence.
Right.
Who put that together? Father Dunn had told Chippy about the contracts. He's kind of piecing this together as they go. It's just bad news for everybody.
Bust a crack pipe on Chippy's face.
He uses his tongue to set up the detonation.
We said it before, we'll say it again, man. You don't introduce the gun in Act 1 if you don't use it in Act 3, Jim.
This is a cool moment. Blasphemy activates Chippy somehow by touching him with that tongue of his, and you see it with the eye. It's like smoldering, smoking effect. It's sizzling, almost like he's fried his brain with that, like some kind of psychoactive agent. Also, it's great. He opens up his eyeball from the button, the Blasphemy mask, and he lifts it up, and you see the eye underneath because it's just a button usually. I love that design.
You know what's wild? None of that is in here.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's go back. Let's see where it deviates. I saw this, I think.
All right. Turn the page. All right, turn the page. Is it in there?
Yeah, it's still on board. This is different.
Yeah.
This spread is different.
Yeah. Yours is better. I want yours. It's much more subdued here.
Huh. This is these are extra pages.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's fully changed, man.
Well, these are replaced, and so the extra pages, what that reveals, it's interesting the way that the ending has changed.
Yeah, there's 3 new pages here.
What changes is that we see in the collected edition Chippy sharing his blood with the others, and it's in a cup. You know, it's almost a religious ceremonial thing of like, drink some of my blood so we can survive this. You know, assuming this coffin's full of explosives, so drink my blood, and we'll see what happens. But then the other piece that's revealed is they blow up the church. The heroes blow up the church because they sense this is happening. Even though it was going to be Blasphemy that does this, Chippy would have beaten Blasphemy, but the heroes actually send in a bomb, a missile, because they're worried about him sharing that with everybody. Right. And that is also extra stuff.
It is, yeah. Like, you see the same missile that sort of penetrated the hostage situation building. So you know that it's, you know, King Rat at the helm.
It's a pretty big difference. Yeah. Because you're learning, you know, in the trade paperback, you learn that the heroes did this, that they made the choice to kill those sidekicks. That's just not in the miniseries. You know, like in the miniseries, they kind of act surprised and like, you know, they're reacting and stuff, and it's a little bit of a different reading experience.
Yes, it's interesting.
And then the big reveal, of course, is the return of Max Immortal. Yeah. Truman is back, and that's what was causing all of the erratic weather conditions, the solar flares, all of that stuff is the return, basically, of this superhuman god. And some differences, I think it's a little bit more explicit in the trade paperback. We actually see his return.
Yeah, because obviously this is done after Max Immortal was created, so he had an idea exactly of what the character looked like. It actually makes me, you know, we'll do this off cam or in our own time, but in issues, like, let's see what the True Man billboards and stuff look like and see if it's different, like if he redrew those after he solidified what that truly became. Very cool. And that's the thing, like, as an artist, oh yeah, there it is. You gotta perfect your stuff. If you have the opportunity, I don't know anybody who can like sit still and sleep comfortably knowing that their work isn't perfected to like where they want it to be. So like, you know, this is what Rick Veach wants you to read.
Almost everybody does that too. Yeah. I mean, the people that care.
The
right?
people that
you know,
care.
You hear about Dan Cloud, you know, these collections, Chris Ware, obviously, when he puts the collections together, making revisions and things. I love this ending, by the way. So the very last page, and it is the same, is the broadcasters. Really good use of wrapping up having the radio broadcasters is, this is the emergency broadcast system. It's not a test. We repeat, this is not a test. And then it's just like the sound of the alarm. Because like the world changes. The day Truman comes back, this day, the world changes. So it's a great ending to a great story. Like, it's every single one of these 5 issues has awesome qualities. And you get to the end of it and it's like, it is a setup for a bigger story.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Super satisfying. My plan was to read essentially an issue a night this past week when we're preparing for this. Cracked the book open and I could not put it down. You know, I could not put it down. It was just too engrossing. I was on board with everything Rick Veach was selling me. It was a very, like, I was never taken out of the reading experience for 1 second. You know what I mean? It just flowed. And you could tell that Veach was in that flow state while he was putting this together. And it was, for as harrowing as the subject matter is that we were just discussing, you could tell that he was, like, in the zone. And it just made for a good read.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I remember reading this as a kid. You said it a couple times, Ed. You can't unsee this.
No.
This completely changed me as a comics fan. Like, how do you ever read a Marvel DC comic after reading this?
Yeah. It lets you. It's like the sacred tablets or something. It's like giving you the code to like what those comics were that you were growing up with, and the sort of BS that you bought into, that you have your long boxes filled with. It's nonsense. Product. It's just, you know, it might not be under ruse, but it ain't much different.
It's the greatest critique of that corporate published superheroes that I can imagine.
Sure.
I think there's even one scene, and I was trying to look for it because I read this, you know, and I'm making notes. I swear there's a scene where they reference the movies. Like, most people see this stuff in the movies because they're not readers. and I couldn't find it again to show on screen. But I swear it's in there, and that was one of those where it's like, wow, even better 30 years later, more relevant today than ever.
No, there's something in there that references the movies for sure.
It made me think of Supreme, because when Supreme came out, I remember it was volume 2. You know, like I was reading, there weren't very many words in those comics. I read all of them, even the Indicia. But the volume 2 thing was a cool gimmick, because Supreme starts with a Max Immortal Superman type character returning to Earth after being away for some time. And it made me think, like, a little inspiration for Rob Liefeld here.
And Rob got his inspiration from a Jim Lee interview in Wizard from earlier, where Jim Lee was talking about doing like a Death Blow issue 50 or something. So they're all sharing influences, those guys.
Yeah, that's not too far out of an idea, I suppose.
Jim, can we make an agreement before we get out of here to read some more Rick Veach in the future on the channel?
Hey man, I'm ready to read Max Immortal right now.
Should we bounce?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when the next videos are available. Octobriana is still in stores, right? Get them while they're hot, man, because they're selling out quickly. Patreon.com/EdPiscor for the serialized Red Room comic strips.
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. Get Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Jimmy, I think I gotta go read some Carl Barks comics for a minute before we launch into any more Rick Veach, man. Give him some more orders.
Read more comics.